Hello, it's Durgamata here, doing something I've never done before in my life, which is video silk painting like this. It's for my fantastic cohort, the members of my program, and they're starting the silk painting week today. First of all, I'll show you how I've set the table up. As I sellotape down a large plastic sheet here. It's actually a plastic sack which is woven. It's a kind of tarpaulin-y type material, and from experience I know that it's waterproof but not perfectly waterproof. So on top of it as well, for the tactile and comfort, I've put a towel on top of the plastic. But silk paint, this particular silk paint is not indelible, but it's still not easy to get off. It's actually an acrylic version of silk paint which you can use safely with children because it's not toxic and it washes off much easier. And it comes in these little bottles you'll find in your silk paint kit. And because knocking things over and spilling is the biggest danger and problem in silk painting, I found a little lid of a box. It was actually in the recycling rubbish. I've used rolls of kitchen roll and propped up the bottles nicely, taken their lids off ready, kept everything together. Any of these little tricks helps a lot. And then for my first picture I'm taking Camellia, which is one of my favourites, as the actual sizes of the petals and the leaves is quite big, so you can play with colour in them. You can mix the colours in them. And because of having done them before and knowing the colours that work well, I have mixed up just 3 colours, white, red and yellow here. And you'll see I've got a deep orange and a pale orange. That one's just the red and the yellow. This one's red, yellow and white. I've got a deep pink and a light pink, a deep yellow and a light yellow. The light yellow really should be paler, but I've only got 6 holes, so that's what I've got at the moment. And I can use the white and the red straight from the bottle if I need. So I'm going to start by doing the petals of the flowers. I've got my water in a jam jar, and every time you mix a colour, when you finish using one colour, give the brush a good wash and dab it dry with tissue. You can check then that there's no dye on it, and also you don't want to get water onto the picture because the silk is ironed onto freezer paper, and when you iron it on, it means that the back of the silk is sealed. But if you get it too wet, then the two separate and you get it a bit mushy and the colours mix where you don't want them to. So I'm going to start off, in fact, with a little bit of direct red. I haven't got it in the palette. And you can see how the smallest amount just spreads out. Here it's spread out and completely filled that petal. Here it's still spreading. So the next bit, I'm going to use the brush and put some orange in. So I've got the orange on the brush like this, and I'll hold it up so you can see what happens. Just putting a tiny bit of orange here, and you can see the way that it's spreading out now. And do those 3 with the orange. And I'll do some of these ones as well. You can hear some flute music from one of my spiritual teachers' concerts, peace concerts, in the background. So it becomes a very peaceful, gentle activity. And I always love mixing colours, so when I've put some orange on like that, I'm going to wash my brush. Lots of wash, wash, wash. Get my cloth that checks that it's clean. Yep, that's nice and clean. And I'll take some of the deep pink and see how that works with the orange. I'm actually going to try it from the bottom, and it'll be giving a bit more liquid to the orange, getting it to spread a bit further. And it says in your instructions you don't need to paint right up to the edge, because as long as there's enough liquid there, the colours are going to move to the edge themselves. They just flow. So I think that's probably got enough. Let's try a bit from this one. Tilt it that way. So it's pushing the orange out. I'll put a little bit in the centre here. And I'd quite like to see what the pink looks like on these curved petals here. On the underside. Not a problem. Okay, that's enough of the pink for now. I'm going for yellow next. A bit of the pale yellow here, just to complement. Ah, do you see what I did then? I went straight to the water and I didn't dry it enough. So when I went into the yellow, it didn't really take the yellow onto the brush, it just had the water already loaded on. So that was a good accidental mistake. Here you are, there's the yellow going on. And you can see how lovely it is with the colours starting to mix now. Put a bit of yellow on that one. Let me come back to that and encourage it to mix a bit more. I think I'm going to put yellow on these ones. You can see why I like camellia, because most plants you just would have one colour or two colours on a petal, but with the camellias you can really be quite multicoloured, not multicultural, multicoloured. There we go. I'm going to put a tiny drop more red now, and because there's no room for the red here and I don't want to put a big spot, I'm just putting it on the palette in an unauthorised space, but it's perfectly fine. And I can just get a tiny touch of the red. Maybe put a bit in here, at the bottom of those, to deepen those colours. You see, you just touch it, you don't have to brush it. That's what I'm trying to show for this. I think I'll make this bud quite deep red. You will find sometimes that it goes, however still your hand, I'm holding it up to try to show you, but however still you are and however much you keep it down, it will sometimes bleed into another colour. Don't worry at all about that. If you're really concerned, what you can do is get a drop of clean water and put it in the petal where you had it leak and didn't want it to leak. And then I've got some folded up bits of tissue ready. Just dab it, and most of the colour that you've put on will come off. Do you see, that was where I was concerned that it had leaked onto that petal, and now it's so little of it there, I don't think it's going to even notice. So a bit more orange this time. A tiny bit more orange here, where that line was a little bit abrupt. I like it more when it's grading very gently from one colour to another. And the same here. The same here, there's a little bit of a sharp line. Put a drop of water on. my blotting cloth, blotting paper, take that bit out, and then I think I'll replace that one with the orange. Can you see how the colours are beginning to come together now? I'm doing it in a very fussy way. You see how the one on the actual picture, she's just used yellow and green with a blue background. But I like to use more colours and be more inventive. Now I'm going into the pink, the deep pink, you can see here. And I'm going to do some of these outside petals in the deeper pink. It's the back of the petal. Obviously when you're doing it, don't hold it up like this. Keep it flat on the surface, it's much easier to control. But I want it to be facing the camera if I can. That's why I'm doing it like that. And while it's still wet, I'll put a tiny touch of the red in it. You see this one, I've actually done a little touch of red onto the wet orange because I only used a tiny bit of the red. It's not gone dark like the full red is here. It's just given it a little bit of a pinkish tint. I'm diluting it with a bit of water there so that it mixes with the orange. I'm going to blot it a little bit. So I've used a bit too much water for my liking. Just putting a tiny drop in there. I'm not going to decide on what colour to do the centre of the petals, probably until I'm just about finishing it, because it'll depend on what the rest of it looks like. Put a tiny bit more of the red in here in order that there's not a sharp line. I want to make that sure that pink is a little bit damp and they'll go together smoothly. Now this one I'm showing you how to play around with it with a lot of fuss. The next one I'll do much more simply. I'm aware that I'm probably going into a lot too much detail for someone who's not done it before. Just make those inside bits in the yellow, because there's only a tiny space for it, even though I'm using a thin brush. It's sitting there, so I'll just lift a little bit off with the tissue. So that's more or less the flowers done. The next thing I want to do is the leaves. So I put paws